Lemon Amiga presents a Playguide video review. Sit back and enjoy the show.
Hi there, welcome to another Lemon Amiga game guide and review. In this week's episode we'll be checking out Rampage, developed by Monarch Development and published by Activision in 1989. The game opens with a basic title screen and no music in this game whatsoever. On the title options menu we can press the keys 1, 2 and 3 to select players 1, 2 and 3, and by using the cursor keys, pressing those keys left and right, we can then toggle the playing options. We can have several controlling options including the keyboard and the joystick, and we can even toggle players inactive as well. So for this first round let's just select the central character Lizzie and let's check this game out. In Rampage we have to destroy buildings. And when all the buildings are clear on the level, then we get to move on to the next one. Rampage is based on the original arcade version, released in 1986 and created by Bally Midway, and most of the arcade features are in there. And just like the arcade, we get to control up to 3 characters. In this game, we get to play larger-than-life villains, known as George, Ralph, and the lizard character, which we are playing at the moment, female lizard known as Lizzie, and these are of course based on popular movies, starting with 1933 King Kong, the arcade original starring Fay Wray, and also the 1935 Werewolf of London, that Universal picture which went on to inspire many werewolf pictures. And lastly we get to control a giant lizard known as Lizzie, based on Godzilla, Ishiro Honda's major work from 1954, Godzilla. And if anyone hasn't checked any of those movies out, King Kong, Werewolf of London or Godzilla, I definitely recommend those. I've seen all 3 and they are brilliant. In Rampage we play as one of 3 human players, and those human characters apparently in the storyline have had a lab experiment gone wrong. One of those has had radiation poisoning and the other one has had a mega vitamin, and basically all 3 characters have had a lab screw up, which means periodically they turn into 20-foot tall savage monsters. Now that we have those savage monsters under our control, the aim is to destroy the city. And just like the best Godzilla films, we must wreck that city into the ground, out from under our feet. On the screen there are a number of things which will aid us and to prevent us from doing that. First of all, you can see the helicopters, which we shall see later on. They will definitely cause pain, but they will disappear periodically, giving us a free rein. And you can see a guy that blew up one of those buildings, meaning those things can be levelled in a flash. As soon as you are spotted on any level, the army are drafted in, and it won't be long before those military guys appear from those windows, and you can eat those away for a little more food. You can see the damage bar right at the top of the screen will take a hammering as long as we are soaking up those bullets. And unlike Godzilla films, the original Godzilla was indestructible. No, this is not indestructible, and if we take too much damage then we'll crash out and we'll turn back into our human form. And that is not the aim of the game. The aim of the game is to rampage through the city, and it's called mass destruction. If we touch one of the falling buildings as it is descending into the ground, that will also cause us damage, and if we fall off one of these buildings that will also cause pain. but if we press the fire button, we will jump off the building, and that will not cause us any damage no matter how high we jump. So if we're going to fall off that building, always press fire to jump off that thing, just as you see those clouds appearing on the bottom of the screen. Sometimes the army will even explode buildings on our behalf, and that's great, and for the most part the army of course are to be avoided. On the lower section of the screen we can see a road and a taxi there. We actually arrive in a taxi to each scenario, and we can blow that taxi away for extra points. Later on we'll also find tanks and trains and other things that we can blow up, and lo and behold our first tank appears there. It's always great to get rid of those, and it's also very beneficial of course, because we do not want high velocity impact shells ricocheting off our hide when we are trying to destroy these buildings. Sometimes the soldiers in the windows will lob sticks of dynamite down, and they are pretty accurate, but if you can see those appearing you can avoid those. And sometimes the army will fire stray bullets as well, but those are absolutely nowhere near as bad as those helicopters with their chain machine guns. And sometimes you can avoid the army in the window and concentrate on the big firepower. And if you get caught out by someone laying a trap or dynamite under a building, you can always try to eat that guy and destroy that dynamite before it does any damage. But you can see we incurred some damage by moving through the rubble, and never move through rubble in this game. Unfortunately we cannot survive that, and we can take away this last building and see if we can progress, but you can see that energy is bottoming out, so it's not particularly easy. You may notice we aren't always given a sound effect for every single task that we perform in this game, and unfortunately the Amiga version does have sound lags, and if there are too many things happening on the screen you won't hear everything going on. But you can see we are down to our last scrap of energy, so unfortunately we are reduced back to our human form, naked, and we'll have to exit left. There is a high score table, and luckily we can press the keys on the keyboard to enter our name, and that's great. There's nothing more fiddly than trying to do that with a joystick. And look at that, a wagon there ready to blow up. So I do like those features of this game. And let's skip on to another character. We've tried Lizzie already, let's try George now, and let's see if the action is any different. As you can see, each character is identical except for the graphic representation on the screen. They can jump the same distance, and no character has any special advantages or features. Sometimes we can grab onto the sides of buildings and jump like Tarzan from building to building, but that isn't very easy, and you have to line those things up along the edges of the building. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. If we move off the edge of buildings, we can also try to stick to the side of those, but sometimes if we move off the edge, he will fall off the building and we will simply lose energy. The Amiga version was coded by Kenneth Hurley, and Kenneth Hurley went on to Chuck Yeager's Air Combat, the original version, on the Mac and the PC, which appeared in 1991. Chuck Yeager's Air Combat 2 appeared on the Amiga, and he went on to work on Far Cry, and Ken Hurley is actually a military consultant at the moment, and so his military background on this game certainly went on to modern inventions and creations. The graphics were created by Warwick Holfeld, and Warwick went on to ABC Monday Night Football in 1991 on the Amiga and created the graphics for that. No other information is known about this game, created of course by Activision, by the in-house team, and of course no music in this game, and we don't know who created those great sound effects either. Taking a quick look at the comparison zone, we can see a 3-player experience being played out on the arcade and on the Commodore 64, and you can see a pale imitation, a stock 2-player game appeared on the NES, and this game really does come alive in multiplayer, and let's just take a moment to appreciate those great arcade multiplayer sound effects. This game also appeared on the Sega Mega Drive, the Atari Lynx with a great 4-player version, PC-DOS, and 8-bits such as the TRS-80, the ZX Spectrum and the Amstrad CPC. In 2011, it was announced by New Line Cinema that they were trying to develop a movie idea along the same theme of this license, and New Line Cinema, well, they were part of the Sony organisation, who actually now own Activision and all their back catalogue. They even announced a director, and the announced production was definitely going ahead on this, but since 2011 no movie tie-in has actually materialised, so I can't help thinking it would be a great opportunity. Once again, let's enter our name on that high score table, and let's play this game for the third and the final time, and this time let's choose Wolfman himself, Ralph. And for this I will switch off the other players and press escape to actually start the game, and it's a bit crazy to press escape to start the game. You would have thought a simple joystick press would have done. And as far as I know, players can jump in at any time simply by pressing the fire button. I'm not sure whether that's on the options menu or at any point, but just like Rodland, hopefully extra players can join in. Let's go through this game and let's see if we can't get any further with it. The aim is to destroy the buildings, of course, but the major theme is to take care of all these guys. By collecting those, we can munch down on them, and you can see our energy is still at the top. Once a few of those guys have disappeared, we can then knock the building down, and we can even walk on the ground and collect those guys from the ground as well. Avoiding the helicopters isn't too hard, but you must keep an eye on those, and if it's at all possible, get rid of those helicopters, because they really can cause damage. But once again, you can see falling off that building has caused damage, so what we can do is loiter around this spot, wait for a few guys to appear, get rid of these helicopters, and when the guys appear, we can obviously grab those for a little more energy. That means we move on to the second level, hopefully with a bit more energy, because we are always given a tiny bit at the beginning of each level, and that should mean our damage meter is virtually full. At this early stage in the game, it's important to plan out a route ahead. Notice if the damage is depleting, then it's time to move on and try to get some more of those guys. If we can maintain that damage meter on maximum, it means we don't take much damage on this early level, and it means that we'll find the later levels a little easier. So you can see me destroying the buildings in between, walking from guy to guy, and obviously avoiding those helicopters as much as possible. And again, if we can preserve that energy at this early stage, jump from one building to the next, that is always helpful. And now you can see me ignoring the rest of that building so that I can munch down on these candidates and preserve our damage at all costs. Let's see if we can get this other guy. Yes, we can, and that's great. He will blow up that building for us. That means that we have another soldier to collect, and again we are trying to maintain that damage. So you can see there are 3 guys. Sometimes we can even collect more than one at the same time, which is helpful. You can see by the time we get to level 3 out of however many there are in this game, perhaps 10, maybe 20 levels, and no, I have never completed this game. Well, now that we're on level 3, you can see me marching from guy to guy trying to maintain that energy, and between doing that I'll actually be knocking down those buildings. So again, you can see I'm just moving and collecting those at all costs, and ignoring those buildings because we don't have a time limit in this game. We are not pushing for time and will not change back given a time limit. You can see I'm trying to avoid all that firepower and all those sticks of dynamite. It can certainly be helpful to do that, and just to wait around. In the window you can see a burger, and that will give us even more energy. And you can see sticking to the sides of those skyscrapers we can actually knock the one in front, and we can actually lean behind and grab the one behind as well. We can also punch up and down, and sometimes we can knock the skyscraper behind us as well, and so we can damage those buildings in a number of different ways. So apart from falling off those things, which is always a constant menace, we are yet again heading for the soldiers, trying to blow up those helicopters and jumping out of the way at the last moment. That's all we have to do in this game. And look at all those guys up there. Well, surely we really need some help at this point. Let's move along and let's see if we can't collect a few of those for an early snack. And sometimes they will just pop out of windows and be collected just like that. But you'll notice that energy doesn't recharge very quickly, and it takes a lot of guys to actually recharge our energy point. According to the Moby article, there is actually a cheat where we can destroy and eat the other players, and if we eat the other players, that will give us full health eventually. But we do not have multiplayers in this playthrough, basically because I like to play all my play guides in one-player mode. Every game under the sun benefits from two-player action, and in this game having 3 players all at the same time, all at the same screen, creates complete mayhem, and literal mayhem, as you can see, and that really is a joy. But we'll not be checking out the multiplayer experience. As I say, every multiplayer game is an absolute joy, but let's check out the single-player experience and let's see if that stands up. You may also notice tips appearing in the interscreen sections if you want to eat well, punch slower, and I don't really get that, but what it's really saying is if you hang around the level, surely some more guys will appear, and as long as we aren't taking many hits, we can clear those guys and maintain their health. So let's get rid of those helicopters. They will respawn, of course, after a certain time, but now that we've got rid of those on the level, that gives us a nice easy break, and we can concentrate again, not on the buildings, but on the guys. Let's climb up there. The controls aren't immaculate, and sometimes we must be pixel perfect to climb up those, and sometimes he will just climb onto the sides of things pretty easily. Sometimes, again, we have to be pixel perfect, or perhaps incredibly lucky to jump from building to building, but that is possible. But unfortunately the controls are a little laggy and they are a little unresponsive, even though this game has been well programmed and all the features from the arcade should be in there. Unfortunately the controls, being a little muddy, do let this game down slightly. And you even saw we can punch while we are flying through the air, and even grab guys through windows even though we are crashing to the ground. Just like that. And we can munch on those even while we are taking a fall. So again, that damage meter is the only thing to be maintained, because that's the only thing on the screen. It's a great feeling to get through these buildings and still be pretty healthy at the end of it. And you can see extra items like a light bulb, and you will actually find fare rate and people hanging out of windows and special items to collect. Sometimes they will give us food, and sometimes they will just give us points. And the points in this game is reasonable. It moves on to 53,000 we are on at the moment, and I'm sure you can have hundreds of thousands in this game. And at this stage in one player mode the action is harder, and on 2 and even 3 player mode the action is much easier, of course, because you can get rid of most of these guys, and that means the buildings are defenseless. Level 5 contains one of the few levels with a tree background, and all the rest have a city landscape. Now you can see these graphics are primitively drawn, but they are functional. They could have been slightly better and slightly bigger, of course, but it's great to see those tinted windows and most of the animations from the arcade as well. We can see helicopters buzzing around in the background, but none of this slows down the action. Even though this is only level 5, you can see our damage has reduced over halfway, and even touching those helicopters is a major disaster, because that has wiped away, well, virtually all of our damage there. We did have a reasonable amount only a few seconds ago, but wandering into those helicopters is a very bad thing to do. So what I'm actually doing is trying to wait for those guys to appear in the windows so I can march over there and have a quick snack, whilst avoiding the helicopters. Again, with no time limits, it is possible to hang around and avoid all this dynamite, but unfortunately it does not look like we are going to get a free meal, so I'm going to have to wade in and destroy that. Level 6 introduces another feature, or rather a graphic feature in the game, and that's the bridge. The bridge can be destroyed and we can walk through that, as we shall see a little later, but again you can see me walking from meal to meal, hopefully trying to maintain that energy, climbing down those buildings and grabbing on to those army soldiers as they try incessantly to try and blow us away. But again, climbing up and down, moving from meal to meal is definitely the best way to go, because that energy, as I say, it really does take too long to build back up, and it isn't really possible even at this stage to build that all the way back up to the top. So let's try and maintain that. You can see the letter D, that's a good indication of where the energy is, and you can see a medal, which just gives us a little more score. We can see by concentrating on the human element we can keep the energy. Well, just wandered into there, that destruction just wandered into that rubble, but by concentrating on the humans we can keep that energy at some kind of reasonable level, and that means we can continue. And look at that, jumping onto that bridge means we can survive, and that's just another graphics element in this game. Again, let's move from guy to guy. Look at that, the tank falling in the river there, that's another funny feature. And the multiplayer game is very funny, and sometimes this game is hilarious, and sometimes it's very difficult and annoying. But it's great to be able to move through that water like a cartoon effect, and that just adds to the sense of humour in this game. And you really do need a sense of humour playing this game if you want to move around these levels, causing wanton destruction and blowing everything up. It's a great multiplayer game, and it's also a great single player game, but I can't help feeling, of course, the single player game does lose a lot over the multiplayer experience, and even these funny factors can't help the fact that it is very difficult to maintain the energy, and as an arcade original it was meant to do that, and then you put your money in there even more often. But taking a look at the scores, your Amiga gave the Amiga version 72%, Amiga Format Issue 1 gave 72% in August 1989, CO Amiga gave Rampage 80%, and Ace Magazine gave this 83% in July 89, but actually gave it 92% in September 89. That gives an average rating of around 8 out of 10, and I think apart from no music and slightly unresponsive, lacking one-player experience, I think the multiplayer experience is tremendous and really saves this game. So thank you once again for viewing another Lemon Amiga game guide and review.